Early in the morning on November 14, 2024, a large crowd of onlookers gathered at the village. They formed small groups discussing intensely from the expressions of his team leaders. It's clear that something major is about to happen in the village. Police cars slowly approached from the distance and parked at the village entrance courtyard. Subsequently, a woman around 50 years old stepped out of the car in handcuffs. Amid the crowd's discussions, police officers escorted the woman to a small alley. Perhaps due to the long time that had passed, the woman hesitated briefly before pointing toward her residence. What exactly happened in this house before? And why do the villagers harbor such deep hatred for this woman? On July 21, 1997. Location: Yingtan City, Jiangxi Province. That morning, Mougen, who lived in Huangxi Town, returned home early after finishing his farm work. After eating the breakfast prepared by his wife, Mougen lay down on a bamboo mat to rest. However, shortly after lying down, his body began to curl up, convulsing uncontrollably, and he continuously let out moans of pain. His family thought Mougen's symptoms were caused by heatstroke from working in the fields that morning. So they called the village barefoot doctor to help treat him, but after more than 20 minutes, the patient's symptoms not only showed no improvement at all but actually became even more severe. He even began foaming at the mouth and lost consciousness. Sensing something was seriously wrong, Wu's family hurriedly carried him on a bamboo bed to the town's health clinic. Unfortunately, as soon as Mougen was brought to the hospital, the doctor informed the family that the patient had already stopped breathing. Faced with this sudden tragic news, Wu's family was quite puzzled. Because Mougen was only 29 years old and had always been strong, he was known as a tough guy in the village. Why did he suddenly drop dead after coming home from farm work and eating breakfast this time? Not only were the deceased family suspicious, but even the village barefoot doctor told Wu's family that the victim's symptoms didn't look like heatstroke but rather poisoning. Could his wife Pan Yuanju have poisoned his breakfast? Although people had suspicions, Pan Yuanju's subsequent actions dispelled everyone's doubts. Her husband ate at home at that time. She ate at the same table with him and she was fine. His forage, whatever rice, she ate all of it herself without any reaction. If you don't believe me, you can taste what I made this morning and see if there's poison. At that time, his father didn't dare to taste it, so in the end they called Pan's mother over. Her mother tasted the food she had cooked that morning, but after tasting it, there was no reaction. So his father thought it was probably a misdiagnosis by the doctor. Additionally, since the incident happened suddenly and the weather was hot, making the body prone to decay, Wu's family, having dismissed their suspicions, planned to bury Mougen in a couple of days. However, on the 5th day after Mougen's burial, his older brother, Mougen, who had heard about his brother's death, rushed back from out of town. In his eyes, his younger brother had always been strong and healthy and had never had any illnesses. How could something as minor as heatstroke have led to such an accident? Although other family members were reluctant at Mougen's strong insistence, Wu's family chose to report the case. Soon forensic experts arrived at Mougen's burial site to collect evidence. Through testing the residual contents in the deceased's stomach, police made a significant discovery. Wu's gastric contents tested positive for tetramine apoptorodendicide. This means that the deceased Wu didn't die from heatstroke but rather from poisoning. Therefore, what was originally classified as an accidental incident is very likely a premeditated murder. The Yingtan police quickly intervened in the investigation. It's known that tetramine is a colorless and odorless poison, and due to its extreme toxicity, it has long been prohibited by the state for personal storage and use. However, this case occurred in a rural area in the 1990s when regulations weren't as strict. We have a rural market here that runs every 3 days. When the market is open, there are people selling rat poison, both locals and outsiders who come here to sell. Therefore, this was an easily obtainable poison that rural households frequently use to prevent rodent infestations. Its widespread availability immediately shattered the police's hope of tracing the case through the source of the tetramine. Subsequently, officers learned from the examination report that besides the breakfast eaten that day, there was no other food in the deceased's stomach. This ruled out the possibility that the victim had accidentally consumed poison. Additionally, neighbors all reported that Wu was positive and hardworking in his daily life. Due to his physical strength, villagers would sometimes ask for his help, and he would assist without complaint. This also eliminated the possibility of suicide. Based on all the analyses, the police believe this was a premeditated murder. Investigators then focused on the breakfast the deceased had eaten that day. Since tetramine acts extremely quickly, taking effect almost immediately after ingestion, police concluded the problem must have been with the breakfast. Unfortunately, since some time had passed since the incident, the breakfast had been completely cleared away, so officers couldn't obtain samples for testing. But one thing was certain, that breakfast was prepared by his wife, Pan Yuanju. Just as police were preparing to summon Pan for questioning, she seemed to vanish into thin air, suddenly disappearing without a trace. This behavior dramatically increased suspicion on the wife. The Yingtan police immediately began pursuing Pan Yuanju. But what they never expected was that this pursuit would last 27 years. She was about 25 years old when she disappeared, around 1.5 meters tall, slightly plump, and her hair was probably kept medium short. 27 years passed in the blink of an eye. The older generation of criminal investigators had retired. A new generation of officers took over the case and visited the Wu family to understand the original circumstances. However, this follow-up visit led to a major breakthrough in the case that had been dormant for 27 years. In July 2024, the eldest brother Wu Xiang mentioned a crucial clue during the follow-up visit. He said she has no neck, and none of the women in their family have necks. Their necks are taken short. This trait is a hereditary condition, a family disease of thyroid enlargement, and they have a history of this illness. This information immediately caught the police's attention. Since thyroid disease requires long-term treatment, if the suspect sought medical treatment, there would certainly be medical records at hospitals. Based on this characteristic, investigators conducted a province-wide screening of thyroid disease cases. Soon, a woman named Molan in Guixi City caught the police's attention. After identification by the Wu family, this Molan was confirmed to be Pan Yuanju, the criminal suspect they had been searching for over 27 years. Without delay, Yingtan police immediately went to Guixi City to arrest the so-called Molan. At first he struggled a bit, repeatedly asking, "Hey, why are you arresting me? What's going on?" Later, we called out her original name, Pan Yuanju, in our Yujiang dialect, saying we were Yujiang police. After that, she stopped struggling. During interrogation, Pan Yuanju quickly admitted to the crime of poisoning and killing her husband. And all of this originated from a marriage exchange. In 1996, 24-year-old Pan Yuanju was in the prime of her youth, a time when she should have been enjoying life, but was forcibly married off by her parents to a Mougen who was 4 years older than her. The reason given was that her brother had difficulty finding a wife. As part of the exchange, her brother Pan Molan married Wu Mougen's sister Wu Muyin. In that era when males were valued over females, marriage exchanges were often seen as a good solution for poor families struggling with marriage problems. My family forced me to go through a marriage exchange for my brother, but I refused. He said there was nothing he could do because my brother was already getting old, and others his age had already found wives and had children. He said he was still alone. Although Pan Yuanju was extremely dissatisfied with this marriage exchange, she couldn't withstand the pleas from her parents and brother, so she was forced to compromise. Eventually, through a matchmaker's introduction, Pan Yuanju and Wu Molan met. I thought he seemed fine, tall and good-looking, so I agreed. However, regarding their life after marriage, Pan Yuanju's account differs greatly from what Wu's family claims. According to Pan Yuanju, after marriage, Wu Molan's true nature was fully exposed. His volatile temperament that whenever he was displeased, he would rage at Pan Yuanju and even become physically abusive. With no other option, she ran back to her parents' home. But when she returned home, instead of receiving comfort from her parents, she was immediately driven away, because in her parents' eyes, their daughter had already been married off as part of an exchange. If their daughter returned home now, wouldn't their son's wife also return to the Wu family? So, driven away by her parents, Pan Yuanju had no choice but to return to her husband's family. However, the days that followed were even more unbearable for her. Every time I got my period, he would force himself on me. He accused me of refusing to sleep with him, and his family also said I wouldn't sleep with their son. As a woman, how can you have sex during your period? He just wouldn't listen. Every time I had my period, he would beat me in bed. Regarding these claims, the Wu family stated that Pan Yuanju was completely fabricating stories. He would do anything to please her, you know. He couldn't find a wife back then, so he was worried. Having finally married, of course he would cherish her. He always liked to hang around with my uncle. As long as you didn't listen to him, he would curse and swear. Once he was grinning and trying to please her, wanting to hold her hand, but she said, "Forget it, don't touch me, don't touch me." My uncle still liked her quite a bit, but she didn't really like my uncle, although the villagers all said that Mougen was honest and upright. But now that the deceased is gone, it is impossible to determine from the original reports what their married life was truly like. However, it is an undisputed fact that Pan Yuanju poisoned and killed her husband, and it was premeditated. On the day of the crime, Pan Yuanju heated some leftover rice from the night before last and cooked a pot of porridge. When Molan showed symptoms of poisoning, people rushed over and only saw the porridge that he and his wife had drunk. The poisoned rice had already been eaten by the deceased, which is why Pan Yuanju was so confident in asking her mother-in-law to come and taste the food. After the crime was exposed, with her brother's financial support, Pan Yuanju fled her hometown. She then moved around working in places like Jiangxi and Anhui. A few years later, when things had quieted down, she returned to Jiangxi with her brother's help, changed her name to Wu, and married a man surnamed Liu from Guixi City. It wasn't until the end of 2024 that she was finally captured by the police. With this, the case that spanned 27 years was finally solved. What awaits Pan Yuanju will be the harshest punishment under the law, and her brother will also receive the appropriate penalty for harboring a criminal.